you all are here. So the recording, you'll have to click on it. And so what we're going to talk about tonight, this is fun. This is intentional camera movement. I think it's kind of interesting because maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was a woman that was on the same program that I was, speaking program. And she was an ICM expert. And it was like, what in the heck is ICM? And then she got up and she started talking about intentional camera movement. And that's what we've always done and called them motion blurs. So now the new name for it is ICM, but I still call it a motion blur. And so an ICM can be intentional or it can be a mistake that just happens to come out looking well. And intentional camera movements. So intentional camera movements or motion blurs, whichever one you want to call them. They're still fun. They're a lot of fun. So an intentional camera movement can be an accident where you took a photo that just had the wrong shutter speed. In this case, my camera banged up against my camel that I was riding, and it took a picture at a slow shutter speed. And you know what? I liked it. And then I added some textures to it, and it gave me something different. So an intentional camera movement can be a mistake or it can be intentional. Nobody has to know you didn't plan it that way. So, Jabiru stork with a slower shutter speed than what I would have wanted, but at the same time, it's got good motion and I like it and I like the flow of it. Magpie taking off from a log and, I like it. So in the old days, we might have kept our blurry photographs and called them motion blurs, something like this. But with intentional camera movement, and especially now with our mirrorless cameras and our digital SLRs, we can plan, we can intentionally say, oh, okay, this would be pretty interesting. So even if it turns out that we're following these birds as they're flying along, but instead of trying to freeze the wings, now we just slow the shutter speed down and blur the wings. So we can do this intentionally, or we can do this by accident and just have happy accidents, or we can plan it to give us something that's just a little bit different. So sometimes if I've done the picture over and over and over again, and I feel fairly confident that I have the static picture that I'm looking for, then I might start doing motion blurs. And then see what I get with motion blurs. If it's a one-time opportunity with a bird, I may not want to do a motion blur, but if it's something where I've seen it enough, it is pretty routine, then I might go in and do a motion blur. And then we can do intentional motion blurs as well. So I'll talk about this one later on. So simple way to do this is just to slow your shutter speed down and move your camera from left to right. So slow shutter speed, that's kind of the rule of thumb in all motion blurs, is a slow shutter speed, and just move your camera from right to left or left to right, whichever one you want. So here's my starting point. I've just got some pretty colors in the water. Nothing super dramatic, nothing super, it's okay. Once you take 1 or 2 pictures of it, you go, yeah, okay, that's it. But then if I intentionally slow the shutter speed down, so go all the way to 22 if you're on aperture priority, we still have to balance the light meter, remember that, or whatever we need to do. So usually it ends up being a smaller aperture, I'm sorry. So we just, go on here and close down that aperture a little bit and get a slower shutter speed. And then the water becomes this. So it becomes something different. The same water becomes this with a little bit more of a movement to it. The same water becomes this. with even more shutter speed slow. So which way you end up going, that's part of not knowing exactly what's going to happen. So these are little surprises, and a little like those of you all who have taken the textures class with me, you know that textures, once you start laying them on top of each other, we start getting surprises. And that's what happens with motion blurs. So this, to give you an example, this is 4 different motion blurs, just very simple, left to right, exact same river, standing in the same spot, roughly. And this is just watching the sun go down. So motion blur where it's sort of on the purple side, and then motion blur where I think a boat moved through at the top and gave us some sunlight reflecting on the boat, which is the red up in the upper right. And then down in the bottom is, now that the sun's gone down, it's almost turned into black and white. So these are just simple left, right motion blurs. So all I'm doing is holding my camera and just going like this. You can go like this if you want to. Doesn't matter. There's no certain specific way that you're doing it, but it's just a simple moving the camera left to right or right to left. So it's just a simple horizontal movement with your camera. Shutter speed up here is probably a little bit faster. Over here, the big purple one, it's probably a whole lot slower. So it all depends on how fast you're going, how much motion you're going to stop, how slow you're going, how much motion you're going to blur. Comments on that one?
So it's just one motion. You're not just one
No,
time.
just
Okay.
yeah. And that's about it. That's about all you've got when
Yeah,
the
that's all you have.
know, when the
right.
shutter speed's open. That's, you know,
Yeah.
it's all about, that's about what
So-
you've got. It's just
So
one
shutter
movement.
speed, a desired shutter speed would be what? 1/25 or 1/50? What?
It depends. That's where you kind of start out with the 1/25 or 1/15. And then, okay, there's not enough movement in that, or enough, you know, it's stopping still too much. We're not getting it. Slow it down even more, lower the ISO, get as slow as you can. So simple left and right, but you can also do up and down.
Mhm.
So in this case, the reeds in Big Bend National Park, the reeds are going up. They're beautiful golden color. I've got this beautiful blue sky that goes right along with them. Excuse me, not yet. It's got that blue sky. So that means we've got gold and blue, which are the complementary colors that always go good together. And the reeds are growing up. And so this is just a simple up, simple down, simple up, simple down. And you never quite know what they're going to look like. You might end up taking 25 or 30 of them before you get one that's like, yeah, I like that one. So it helps to just keep looking, keep seeing what you're noticing, keep seeing what's drawing your eye to it. But what first got me involved with it was the color combinations. And so, you know, the sky was magnificent blue, and then there was golden of the reeds, but you put them together into a motion blur and it makes it something just a slight bit different. So simply going up and down.
One question about that,
Sure.
that picture that you were just showing. I'm sure the wind was blowing too.
Can't remember whether it was or not.
Yeah.
Could have
So
been.
that would affect
Yeah,
it as well, right?
Exactly. So if we have some movement in the cane with the wind blowing, yeah, could have. Yeah. And then this on the left picture, you can almost see it. That's a beautiful stand of bamboo in Costa Rica that has these, you know, each stalk is a totally different color, but you put them all together and they're all in the same color palette. So we've got color harmony between them. And then we've got that up and down movement of them. And so the one on the left is just a faster shutter speed because we don't have much movement, just a little bit of blurring as I lift the camera up. The one over on the right, we've got more movement. So that means I probably used a slower shutter speed on that. And then which one you end up choosing, it's totally up to you. And that's the reason why they're fun to at least just look at and see what you got. And then, you know, contemplate them later on when you're processing to see which one you like. I kind of like that you can see some detail in this one, but at the same time, I like this one just for the simple shapes and patterns. So a simple up-down movement with some colors that attracted my eye. And it's very variable. So I've got some colors that are attracting my eye. I'm doing, you can see it's some trees and a lake. I'm doing an up down movement. So I'm just moving the camera up and down like this. So I'm just doing da da da. And in this one, I think I've got way too much blue up here, which happens. But in the next one, I'm getting a little closer. I don't have as much blue up at the top. I've got more the blue of the lake down on the bottom, and that makes it a little bit more interesting. So sometimes as you're doing these and looking at them on the back of your camera, you'll go, I don't need to include so much of that up there because that area up there is not interesting. And then here it comes where I'm working more, just moving the camera up and down on the lake. And now I'm getting more what I'm looking for right now. So originally starting out, that real light blue up at the top just wasn't doing it for me. And then that light blue at the top's just not doing it. But now we're sort of getting into more of what I'm looking for. So when you first start out, just realize that you have to look at them and you have to see whether this is going in the direction you want it to go or not, because you're really creating an abstract. And then does this need to be slowed down a little bit, or does it need to be a little bit faster up and down movement? So this is where you just have to kind of sit there and play for a little while. This is a marsh. And the leaves were just beautiful because they were green on one side and rufous or burgundy on the other side. It was just gorgeous. So I photographed them, but then, okay, well, what happens if we motion blur this? So now just moving the camera up and down ever so slightly, little bit of movement of the reeds in here would be something more that I would like a little bit more. Here's one from the same marsh area. So now you can see a little bit more of what those grasses looked like. And I would have liked a little bit more of that movement going in there. And, you know, that might have been sitting there playing a little bit longer and figuring it out. So going from what kind of looked like that. So simple up and down movement. Here's a big one of the other one of the reeds. And I got totally captivated by these reeds this day because everything ended up looking beautiful without too much area down on the bottom, not too much blue up on top, just enough. So this is just a two. And sometimes when I get right in the zone where I want to be, I'll just put my finger on the shutter and just keep firing, just da 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 da, and then look at them to see what I'm doing. Because it's not like you can't, I mean, you can plan, but not totally. You don't have total control over this. There's a bit of a serendipity that goes into it. And here's another one from the same series. But I like where the reeds are a little bit more definite. And then that little movement, Darla, you were noticing that, the little movement of the wind in the reeds.
It adds to it.
Yeah. And then see here, the reeds have almost got a solidness to them in some cases. So you see how each one of those is different. And which one you end up saying, yeah, that's it. That's the one that I like. That's all just totally up to you. Just something a bit different. Here's some reeds at Rockport early one morning at sunrise. And then just moving the camera up and down. First shot, I got way too much of this black stuff because here's what's really bringing my eye. What's really getting my eye is all this lit up reeds. But all this dark stuff down here is just what's in the shade still. But yet we've got too much lake or too much marsh up here. So it's just trying to figure out where the happy medium is. So this might be 15, 20 different shots where you're trying to figure out exactly how much of that dark can I do and how much of the light can I do. But really what I'm interested in is the reeds. So sometimes it's a hit and miss. But you have to notice it and you have to notice what might make a good subject. So here's just, you know, solid feel of blue stem, just in the fall, out at one of the wildlife refuges. There's just a solid field to blue stem. Could be Lynette, it can be out at your property, right? In the fall time. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you could. And then just playing with it, moving the camera up and down, just following the direction of the grasses. So here we're still able to see some grasses, and here we're not able to see the grasses at all. And which one you choose, it's pretty much up to you. Here's one that I saw that I thought would make a nice motion blur. And way off in the distance, autumn in our area, I've got the tallow trees have turned red. I've still got some green, got the blue stem in front of it, and got the pale pastel sky. Okay, this has got to make a good motion blur. So I just started taking the pictures over and over and over again. And then here's what I got. Never mind. I only showed you one. I didn't get anything. So I wasn't happy at all, even though it looks like it's got the makings of a motion blur. I couldn't make it work that day. So don't get discouraged if sometimes you think you've got the pieces and it just doesn't work. So sometimes you just need to play with it and see what you get and see what you don't get. So the key is if you don't take the pictures, you don't know whether you're going to get it or not.
Kathy, is there a particular lens that you like over another for your landscape motion blur type things that you're doing?
So this one was my 1 to 500 millimeter lens. So this was my bird lens,
Okay.
which might be why it didn't work so well. The other ones were probably the 24 to 105 or the 16 to 35.
Okay.
So I tend to like my wide angle or my medium wide angle better. Good question.
Thank you.
And then we can also go in a circle. So nothing says we have to go straight up and down or horizontal. We can also go in a circle, but what this starts doing is it becomes a bit of a challenge because you have to click the shutter and rotate the camera at the same time. So this is holding the camera and doing this back and forth and back and forth. And I can only do this if I keep my hands on the camera and keep repeatedly clicking the shutter. So just click, 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 click. Yeah, you got it, Darla. Just click, 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 click. And that gives you a circle, moving it around. So here you go. And this is letting the camera hang down on the strap and twisting the strap and then clicking using the cable release and letting it unfurl. So.
What about zooming in and out?
So this is zooming in and out.
Okay. Oh,
So-
okay.
Yeah. So this is twisting the camera. And then this is zooming out. So zooming in and out, we just slow shutter speed and then click and zoom. Zoom in or zoom out, whichever one you want. So you can hold the camera, click and zoom, zoom in or zoom out. If you're going to do this with the circles or the zoom in and zoom out, you should be zooming in or zooming out on a main subject. If you don't have a main subject that you're zooming in or zooming out on, it ends up not looking interesting. Going back here, there was nothing in the center of the swirl. Why in the heck do I want to look at a piece of dirt in the center of the swirl? You see that? So if there's not something in the center, then it really doesn't hold our attention very much. So so this is just a simple zoom in and out. If you don't want to zoom in and out, by the way, you can focus, click, and then pull the camera back. You can push the camera in, you can pull the camera back. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. So whichever way you'd like to do that. Here's another one doing the same thing. And this is a zoom in or zoom out. And you notice that my zoom in this case is not as steady. So it gets a little bit of jerkiness in it. So instead of maybe this one was an easier just moving the camera in and out, as opposed to actually putting your fingers on the zoom ring. This one might have been zooming on the ring, so we get a little bit more jerky motion as we go in and out.
Kathy, would you use a tripod on zooming in and out? Would that hold it
Yeah, it
steadier?
would hold it steadier, definitely. It would hold it steadier. Yeah. And then this, we have to put our motion around something that draws the viewer's attention. So this is some azaleas. You can tell what's going on. And then a bee happened to land where my pivot point was. So I'm pivoting off of that azalea. So I'm not pivoting off the center, but I'm kind of pivoting off just off that one azalea. So I'm just kind of playing with this. And we get a little bit of movement in the bee. We don't get some movement in the interior of the azalea, but then out here we get a fairly good amount of zoom going on. So the pivot point right in here so that we can get that right around the azalea. You realize from this that you're going to have a lot of misses. But if you get one, that's all that counts. You get one that counts. And so that's what you're trying for. But, realizing where that pivot point is in a circle, and all I'm doing is just the camera like this. So I'm just holding it and moving it. And it's not even a full circle and a slow shutter speed. Questions on the circles before we leave those?
I just have a question kind of
Sure.
in general. In Texas, because we get so much sun, do you ever find it necessary to use an ND filter?
You could use an ND filter,
Yeah.
but not the split ND, Darla. This is a
I know,
solid
but my
ND.
question, I was gonna ask the same thing, but I
You're
was
gonna ask-
afraid this wouldn't be the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you could put an ND filter on, but
Yeah.
also if you drop your shutter speed, excuse me, if you drop your ISO, so all of this is pretty low ISO. If you drop your ISO, and if you're in the shade, because you probably don't want to be too bright of sunlight, then you could use, if you still didn't have enough, then you could use an ND filter. On the reeds, I was using a polarizer. So I had a polarizer on anyway, because the sky was so beautiful with the polarizer. And so that was letting me drop the shutter speed a little bit more. I'd put a polarizer on before I'd put an ND on.
Okay.
So can you use them both?
Oh yeah, you can use them both, but then your shutter speed's gonna be really long.
Yeah, it's gonna be really long.
And
yeah.
it depends on how much your ND is on that. Yeah.
So there's no other camera settings on any kinds of the menu, right?
Mm-mm.
Okay, gotcha.
No, just, aperture priority f22 ISO 100, and just,
Why not shutter priority?
well, shutter priority, you're controlling the shutter speed. And I really want a slow shutter speed. And so if I did shutter priority and dialed in like the 20th of a second, now I've got to figure out what f-stop I need to get to a 20th of a second. And also then as I'm moving the camera,
Yeah.
I don't get my exposure right. So I'm using
Sure.
aperture priority. Mhm.
Good, thanks.
Ask those questions. They bring things to mind. And then also follow the flow of the subject. So in things like ridges and hills, as Lynette said just a little bit ago, we don't have many mountains in Texas that we can play with, but if we've got some ridges or we've got some hills or we've got some motion, you can follow that motion. So moving the camera along up and down the waves to follow the motion of the waves. So moving the camera up and down because following the motion of the waves. And once again, just a slow shutter speed. So aperture priority f22, if you want to do the polarizer to get it even slower, ISO 100, simple and easy to do. And then just click, 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 click. And then see if you got anything. If not, throw them away, try again. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So follow the ridges. And then you can also do just a totally random pan to see what you get. So you can do something just totally random. So this is a lighted display at one of those walk-through lighted park type things at night. And so it's just some lights. I don't have any idea what it was originally. And this is just a slow shutter speed and then just da 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 around the circle. So just while the shutter's open. And just, you know, just moving it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then keeping one of the colors in the middle, so we get at least something stable inside the photograph. This is a 24-105 lens, by the way. So you can just move the camera however you want to do it, back and forth and back and forth. But this is at night, so that would give you a slow shutter speed anyway. It's kind of interesting what happens over here on these edges,
Mhm.
whatever that was. And then we can also do motion pans from a car or a train or a bus
A boat.
or a boat.
Did that a lot.
Did you do that on the boat in Costa Rica?
Yeah, no, in Norway.
In Norway,
I
okay.
had, I was trying to get waterfall.
Yeah,
And not thinking if the boat is quiet. I just to steady myself, I had put my camera, it's sitting in my hand,
yeah,
but I put my hand on the rail
yeah.
and I said, "Oh my gosh, that's the vibration of the boat."
Of the boat. Yep. Yeah. So as you're just sort of riding along, this is in Camagüey, Cuba. And as we were riding along in the little pedal mobile things, whatever those little things are called, those little taxis that the guys use on their bicycles where you're riding on the back. It was fun taking pictures of the buildings as they were going by. But then it became even more fun to just do these slow shutter speeds. And then doing the slow shutter speed, seeing that the part of the image closer to the camera or stays a little bit more still than everything else going down. So that's where you never know what you're going to come up with. So here's what it looked like. So as we're going by, I've got a little bit of a close focus here, but then look at all this movement out in here and all this movement out in here. So this is just a small vehicle, slow vehicle going by and using the slow shutter speed as the vehicle goes by. And then from there on, I didn't want to take anything that was fast enough to, you know, but for me, I've got to take my pictures first, then I can start playing around with it. But there's so much color and so many shapes and stuff that it just becomes kind of fun to see what this looks like with these slow shutter speeds. So I've got a slow shutter speed and we're propelling forward as we're moving forward. So an interesting, here's same shot, so blurring in the front, blurring at the back, but then that little bit of solid kind of right in there. So one of those where you don't know what it's going to do quite until you start doing it. And then once you start doing it, you go, okay, so this is the effect that I'm getting. And that's the fun of just playing with it, just slowing that shutter speed down to see what we get. This is the 24-105 lens. And just, you know, the movement of the vehicle. I love it. Questions on that one before I leave it?
I have, it's
Go
not really
for
a
it.
question. I don't know how to ask the question, but like say you're on a dirt road and you kind of want to get the trees, but you'd prefer the road to be a little clear.
Yeah,
Could that, is there anything that you can do about that? You
You'll
understand what I'm
see, yeah.
asking?
yeah, you'll see.
You'll see.
You'll
Okay.
see.
There's more to come. Okay.
It's more to come. Yes, exactly. And then we've got our zoom blurs. So this is just zooming the lens, just zooming the lens. So this is a zoom blur, another reason for having a zoom lens on the camera.
It's kind of
And
cool.
so this is graffiti.
Hmm.
And then finding something that's colorful and interesting and has a kind of a cool shape to it. And then just click and zoom, click and zoom. Outside, don't have a whole lot of time to, because of the sunlight, to do a real long zoom. So this is just click and zoom, click and zoom, click and zoom. And so it's just a simple zoom in and out. If you want to, you can move the camera in and out. You can do exactly the same thing, moving the camera in and out. So you can just
Like that.
move with it and then just pull it back. Go in, pull back while you click. Go in, pull back while you click. If you're on a tripod, it becomes a lot more controlled. And these type of things, when you get around graffiti, to me, become a lot of fun.
This is really cool. I like
Yeah,
this one.
it's really cool,
mean,
isn't it?
That's printable art right there.
Zoom blur of somebody else's art. Yeah. But you know, it's got good structure, and then you do something else with it, which makes it kind of fun. Here's another one,
Mhm.
simple zoom blur. And just, you know, zooming in and out, nice colors, nice shapes. I don't really want to go around photographing graffiti, but this way it looks halfway interesting to me instead of just photographing graffiti. So an interesting zoom blur with it. And you notice that the zoom begins over here and blurs out. You know, like the focus point's right here, but yet I'm not totally in the center of the frame. So I suspect that my focus point is over here on the side, and that's where I started and then zoomed out from there. What'd you see in your camera, darling?
Oh, I was just trying to look for something to play with.
Don't play yet. Here's the
I know,
same
you-
door. And this is just, once again, just playing with it from a different position. So you see, it's the exact same door and just playing with it from a different position
That's cool.
with, you know, interesting shapes and patterns and what they do.
Oh, wow.
So once again, just interesting shape and pattern, just you know, focus points right here on the rolling door. I think we were in Granada, Spain for this, and all of the rolling doors that block the shops at night, that protect the shops at night, all the rolling doors had graffiti on them. And so it was some of the finest graffiti that I've seen. Really, really nice street art. But you know, just focus and then just zoom the camera back or move the camera back if you want to. And then 2 rolling doors, each one of them painted differently, but having colors that were somewhat harmonious. And now the focus point is right between the 2 doors. So when I zoom back, both of the colors come back. So adults standing on the street playing with their cameras. So motion blur, how long, how short, you know, that's what you just got to play with. This one's fairly long if you look at it. So we got a lot of pull back. I love them when they do this in the middle, and that's where it's really nice, when, especially when you've got 2 pieces of graffiti that are right next to each other, or 2 colorful objects that would be right next to each other. And then this is a zoom blur of people walking down the street. So I'm just squatting down, and as people are walking down the street, f/22 aperture priority, ISO 100, so that I've got a slow shutter speed. And as I'm clicking, I'm also zooming, clicking and zooming, clicking and zooming. So you see that my focus point is right there. So that's going to be where the zoom begins and comes out from. But now we just get that movement that comes all the way out. So just underneath a, you know, shady archway in Italy. Same thing going down a stair in Venice. So we get some graffiti over on this side. We get some blurry stuff on this side, some blurry stuff out there, but you know what it is. It's a guy going down a short walkway with his briefcase. He's talking on his cell phone. You know exactly what it is. But it just gives you something that's different. So then at that point, you don't want to leave this little place. Just keep your elbow or your shoulder leaning up against that wall. You got yourself a good spot, and just wait for the next person to walk through and zoom your lens and zoom your lens. So I like these. I like these street scenes like this. And then some lady's pink behind. But you see the point of the blur, you know, unfortunately it's right on her behind, but then the trees going up and the walls going up and the stairs going up, just all from the zoom. So wherever you put your focus point, that's where we're going to zoom back from.
Oh,
Good on that one before we leave the street scenes?
So are you, because I'm thinking about this, are you two-handing it or are you using remote?
No, I'm two-handing it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
So I've got one hand on my Zoom.
coordination.
Yeah, I've got one hand on my Zoom and one hand on my shutter. And then I'm to steady the camera, I'm leaning up against that wall.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. So no tripod, no remote. That's too complicated. No, no. No. And, you know, if I did all of that too, people would probably stop walking through your picture. So then we wouldn't get as much action through there. And then this is a motion blur, a zoom blur as well. So the poppy, and then we've got the salvia behind it, and then we've got the sunflowers and the green. So look at it. We've got green, red, blue, and yellow. So we've got 3 of the primary colors and then 1 of the complementary colors. And so we have to stop and we have to do something with this because of our color combinations. So here it is, putting the focus point on the poppy and then just zooming back. So just putting the focus point on the poppy and zooming back. But get this wall over here in there. So you've got to watch for things like that. So we get this wall of the house in here. So all this stuff over here is doing just fabulous, but then we end up getting this big, huge white thing. So you've got to watch what else is in your frame at any given time, because we can end up just detracting the viewer's eye away from what we're trying to show them. So I got my act together. Same flowers, but now I don't have the big wall in there. And it's just a simple zoom back. Now, this one, you notice it's pretty precise. This one's a tripod. So I'm on a tripod. I've got my tripod. I'm focused on the poppy in front of me. I've got a slow shutter speed, f/22. And then while the shutter's opened, I'm just zooming all the way back. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. It doesn't matter.
doesn't matter how fast.
It doesn't matter how
You get a
fast.
different look.
Sometimes it's a different look. Sometimes I like to hold to imprint these flowers and then zoom.
Okay.
So if you hold just a second, you know, you've got maybe a 5-second exposure, but if you hold just a little bit, you get a little bit more definition, in this case, on those red poppies. So instead of just moving right immediately, give it one little bit and then move from there.
Is this manual focus or autofocus on your photos?
It's autofocus on my photos. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm just autofocusing, but I'm zooming. Yeah.
Kathy, when you're not using your tripod, are you using your viewfinder to look at your focus? Or,
Yeah, I got the camera up to my eye. Mhm.
oh, okay.
Yeah. 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 You know, on this, I mean, on the tripod, so it's not so important, but yeah, on the other street scenes, I was looking through the
Right.
viewfinder. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I take the camera down, like the first one that I showed you of the guys walking on the Italian street. I probably had the camera held down at my waist and I was just zooming in and out as people walked.
Huh.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And remember, we can do that spiral turn. So we've got the spiral turn here. We got the zoom in and out, exactly the same field. So I've got the spiral, I've got the zoom in and out, same flowers. So we can play around with this to see which one we get and how we get it and whether we like it or not. And then Darla asked the question, well, can I put that road solid and still have the blur in there? Yeah, that's where we are now. So one solid picture of those poppies.
Yeah.
One spiral of those poppies. And the spiral, based on this flower right here, so that's where the center of my spiral is, back here. And so I've taken two pictures, moved them into layers, and then I've taken my black brush and gone in and brought out the foreground and the poppies and left the spiral in the back.
That's something I don't know how to do.
Ew.
But you can learn how to do
Yeah.
it.
Know anybody who teaches?
Yeah, I know somebody to teach you how to do it. Exactly. So we can take several of these and we can put them on top of each other. And now we can start playing with them even more. So we can get motion blurs where we start playing. And this is, once again, super, super simple layer, just two components, one black brush, super, super simple layer. So easy
that
to
some-
do.
Is that something like stacking?
It's
No?
it's not stacking so much, but what we're doing is we're going into Photoshop. We put the two pictures on top of each other, and we have blending modes between them, so we can bring them in and out to various degrees.
Ooh,
So it's simple to do, and it's a real nice example of how to learn layers. Lynette learned layers when we were in the textures class.
I remember her saying something about that. Hmm.
And by the way, if somebody will remind me tomorrow, I have what are called recipes for how to do these type of layers. So they're step by step, just like making a loaf of bread or just like making a pie. I cannot make a loaf of bread or a pie or a cake from scratch without a recipe. And the same thing for these layer blends is many times you just need a recipe to show you how to do it. You've got one at the end of your handout. So I've already given one to you. And if somebody will remind me tomorrow, I'll send you a recipe for how to do this. So we've got zoom blurs again, and this is no holding. So holding and no holding. So zoom blurs with holding or no holding. Now, by holding, I just explained that. Click the shutter, don't zoom right away, and now zoom back. Let it sit for just a few seconds to imprint your subject. And if you look all the way down there at the end of the plaza in Venice, up at the top, you'll see an imprint of the building. And so that's cameras on the tripod, click the shutter, let it sit for just a second. This is at night, it's a 30-second exposure. Let it sit, and now zoom, and you can let it sit at the end if you want to also. And so what you end up getting are these interesting impressions from where you've let the camera sit, the lens sit before you zoomed. And once again, you kind of never know what you're going to get. So how much you let that lens sit at the beginning or at the end. I suspect with this one, I zoomed out, so I used more telephoto. So this is probably 16 millimeter at the beginning to 35. And then when I got at the end, we're more zoomed in on all of those columns. And so they're imprinted more up there. And you know, what's funny is we could go to the same location and try to recreate it and probably wouldn't be able to recreate it.
Right.
So some of it is just happy accidents, and it worked. You know, it worked this time. Didn't work last time, but it worked this time. So a motion zoom with a hold so that we're getting that impression of the area up there. So a motion zoom with a hold. Motion zoom with a hold, that same red and yellow object that I showed you all earlier. So it's just a motion zoom, it's just a zoom out, but it's got a hold in it. So we get a little bit more impression of whatever that silly stuff was there. Okay, now motion pans. So this is shutter priority. Darla, you asked me about shutter priority. This is shutter priority, 60th of a second. And we need enough ISO to make sure that we're going to balance the light meter. So 60th of a second. And shutter priority, 60th of a second. And now we go to rapid release, the 3 pieces of paper with the H next to it. So the fastest that your camera will fire. And now when the dog runs, if you can keep going, if you can keep moving your camera at the same speed as the dog, we freeze the dog and streak the back. So as the dog's running, I'm just following it. And that doesn't mean you can see it through the viewfinder. I'm just trying to follow as fast as I can. And because I'm at 60th of a second shutter speed, if I can move the camera at the same speed as the dog, then I can freeze that dog somewhat, but streak out completely the background. So they're called motion pans. These are easy to do, very easy to do. So just sitting down on the grass, watching the bicyclers go by. And this is 60th of a second shutter speed, 60th of a second shutter speed. Enough ISO to make sure that you're balancing the light meter. And that means that as you're moving your camera like this, the camera is just redoing its light meter every time you're moving the camera, every time you click. And then as he's moving, if I can move the camera at the exact same speed as the guy on the bicycle, I freeze the bicycle, but I streak out the background. And I love these. I love doing these. These are a lot of fun. And you're going to throw away a whole bunch of them because you started too fast. You didn't move at the same speed. So it's all a matter of timing and moving yourself just fast enough so that you're moving at the same speed as the bicycler. I didn't realize it until just now. That was my husband's favorite bicycle shop. So I just now noticed it. Same thing, except in this case, the car is not parallel to me. The car is going around a bend and I'm at the end of that bend. So I'm hearing the car, and then as it's going around the bend, that's what's giving me that really cool warp. And then this is the type thing that once I see that warp and that distortion from the car going around the bend and me following the car, then I just want to keep doing this. More cars, send more cars so that I can keep doing this, because now who knows what it's going to look like. And it all depends on how fast the car is also. So 60th of a second shutter priority, ISO fast enough to make sure I can balance the light meter and don't get any dark photos. And then rapid release, you just want to fire as fast as you possibly can. But you can only go 60th of a second. So it's not like it's going to fire 14 frames a second because we don't have a fast enough shutter speed for that. And then you choose the one you like. Another one, same corner, just this one, I'm following them a little bit more down the road as opposed to coming around the corner. So you see how each one of these just gives you something different?
That's cool.
Yeah. So we've got things like carousels that we can do motion blurs on. So following,
Oh, wow. That's
but I'm
cool.
following the horse. And since I'm moving the camera at the exact same speed as the horse, I nail the horse, but streak the background.
Are you following it in the direction he's going?
Yeah, as he comes around, I'm just, he's going in a circle. So
Well,
as he
yeah,
comes
but
around, I'm just following him and just
Right.
moving the camera with it for a 60th of a second. And you never know what you're going to get, but that 60th of a second is enough at night to give me that streaky background. And then, you can play with motion blurs, things like this carnival game, cameras on the tripod, focus, down here, everything's solid back here, so nothing's moving. But as the little carnival game goes around, then we get the motion blur on the carnival game,
now where are you focused?
just right
in
there.
the center? Okay.
Yeah, and then it's going around, so I'm not moving the camera, I'm just on a tripod.
Yeah.
So it's a little like having, that Ferris wheel, except the Ferris wheel, at least I was moving the camera with the Ferris wheel, but now I'm not even moving the camera. And this, you have to be on a tripod because we've got to hold the camera steady enough, while it kind of makes a couple of, it's not moving very much on that little game. Zoom in a little bit more and now you get the game looking like that. So now it becomes, what's your photograph? What do you want to capture in this photograph? So now doing something a bit different. I've got some nice trees going up and down. So I'm going to use my 16 to 35 millimeter lens or my 24 to 105 millimeter lens. Probably in this case, I'm using my 16 to 35. And I'm going to move the camera up and move the camera down. Click, 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 just like we've done before. Just click, 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 moving it up and down with a slow shutter speed. And when we do that, we get that. So just moving that camera up and down. So I've got the basic structure, just like I did earlier with those reeds and things. I've got the basic structure of the trees going straight up and down. But now just by moving the camera up and down, now I get the motion blur, moving the camera up and down. So it's just a simple up, down, and then choosing the one that I like the best. And then I can take one static image, the right shutter speed, one blurred image, the motion blur, and now using layers in Photoshop, I can blend them together. So I blend them together and I let you see more of this picture on the top and less of the blurry one on the bottom. This is really simply done just with a black brush. Lynette, you can kind of figure out how I did it, right? It's just a simple black brush. And then just feathering the edge just a little bit here, but it's not moving, starts out not moving the camera too much. So just a nice click, just a nice static image, and then doing some nice simple motion blurs up and down. And then a couple more static image and a couple more motion blurs up and down. And then find the two where I didn't move too much, no tripod. Find the two where I didn't move too much and just kind of line them up so the trees sort of line up. It doesn't have to be perfect. Yeah, Darla.
So how many photographs are you taking in order to go back into, and how do you mark them? I'm not sure how to ask the question. I'm not very good at asking questions. So you're taking these photos, you're going into Photoshop and you're stacking, or what are you calling it?
Layering.
Layering. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So how do you know where to stop and start on your photos? I mean, are you putting a 1 or 2 in front of your camera lens? I mean, to say I started this and ending with this, I mean,
Nah, no,
nah.
no, I'm starting here. And I'm going, okay, this got some potential, and then I did some blurs. And then probably what happened is on a couple of them, when I clicked the shutter, I didn't move very much. And I ended up with a couple more static. So then you say, well, okay, so I've got this one that's sort of blurry. I mean, it's not tack sharp because I was holding the camera moving a little bit, but the one right after it where I got to move really well, we're all in the same light. We're all in the same position. What happens if we stack them on top of each other? So I usually start with that, just two that kind of happen really close to each
Okay.
other, and then just stack them on top of each other, layer them.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Linda?
Yes, I had my mute on.
That's okay. That's okay. So you've got, we got to have two that where I didn't move too much. So, you've got one that, okay, I didn't even move the camera that time. But that might be one where now I've got solid that I can mix with another blurry one.
Yeah, so you can do a deliberate solid and then you can make, okay.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
I don't know how to use Photoshop. So.
Yep, this is a good reason to learn. This is a good way to learn how to do it.
Scares me.
Yeah.
That Photoshop scares me.
Well, it's time to get unscared after a while. Now, here's another one. Once again, just starting to notice in the, these straight up and down patterns, this forest area that we were in Ireland where the trees are growing nice and straight, not a lot of understory, subdued sky. And then, you kind of look at this and you can say, okay, there's maybe a path there or something like that. But this was just a simple, okay, that looks like a cool motion blur, just move the camera up and down, see what happens, just stopping. And then taking one of the shots that wasn't quite blurred, not quite clear either, because sometimes you just don't, hand-eye coordination just doesn't work. And you didn't end up moving the camera during that little second, whatever. And so we've got one of these and we've got one of these. So now if you put them together,
Oh, that's cool.
we get that.
That's what I like.
Yeah.
Wow. That's what I kind of envisioned. Okay.
So now your road that you were talking about, we can do one solid road, and then we can do a bunch of motion blurs from the exact same spot. And now we've got more likelihood we're going to be able to put these on top of each other.
Oh, okay. Photoshop.
Yeah, got to learn Photoshop. It's easy though. It's a very easy little process. It's not too complicated at all. And if I did it over again, I'd probably get rid of that little area right there. A little bit of a bright little smudgy area right there. Yeah.
Do you do that in Photoshop too, or do you do that in Bridge? Okay.
Yeah, it's all in Photoshop. Yeah. So we would process them ahead of time. I go ahead and I process them in Bridge Adobe Camera Raw and do the vibrance and the saturation and the texture and all that stuff. And then if you're going to put them together, then we can go put them together from there. Fairly easy to do. But once again, just a good way to learn some layers. So we're just mixing two pictures together. And then here are some winter reeds in Norway, just light shining on them, really pretty. They looked, absolutely gorgeous, good colors. And then once again, you're doing a whole bunch of this type of stuff, moving the camera up and down, moving the camera up and down. And then sometimes you just don't click right and you get a static image, what looks like a in focus image, only it's really not too much. And then before I leave this is an interesting point to notice. You see how there's kind of a bowing right through the middle of the image. So this is, instead of me literally going up and down, this is me moving the camera more like this.
Oh.
So just a little bit kind of lazy and not moving the camera literally up and down, but just kind of, because it's a pretty fast shutter speed. I mean, it doesn't take very long. And then instead of doing the literal movement, you get this kind of bow if you just kind of move the camera back and forth. So just a little bit more lazy hand movement, but sometimes I like that bow in there. So just the different way that you get from moving the camera like this versus moving the camera literally like this. Yeah. Same as you get when you move the camera like this. You just get different positions. So anyway, going back to these reads, and then, so this is a solid image. I don't think this has any overlays in it. Yeah. So one of these, this was the blur, this was the real blur. And then I took them together and did that.
Wow.
And then just figured out where I wanted to do my solid versus my complete abstract. And that's up to you. That's you once you start getting in there and playing, how much we actually blend them together. I like these. I like this type of image. I like doing these. Questions on that one before I leave it? You at least understand how it's done.
I like the softness of the photo.
I do too. And you notice this, the more solid image you see is soft.
Yeah.
And so I'm not putting a super hard image on top of a totally blurred image. They're both soft. And so you put them together, and I think that it's a little like that trail scene in Ireland, that the bottom's not real solid. It just adds the dreaminess of it. And then this is one called the Ventosa technique. And the Ventosa technique, it's not one of my favorites of the motion blurs. You take 20 or 30 shots of the same thing, and you try to hold pretty steady. And then you blend those 20 or 30 shots together. You can hold steady, you can zoom with each shot, you can move, but when you line them all up, because where Photoshop will do for, say, stacking an insect, it will do auto align because it has solid lines to line several photos up, and then we can blend them together. If you've moved the camera, then the software really doesn't line them up very well. So with this photograph, it lined it up pretty well because there was a solid line between the background and the table. But this isn't one of my favorite techniques. I think it probably, I've seen some interesting things done with it. I have never been able to create anything horribly interesting. So 3 photos or 30 photos that you just fired off from the same location, maybe a little bit of blur, layer them on top of each other, and then try to get something interesting out of it. And maybe before we had image stabilization, and maybe before we had cameras that were better than they are, it could create an interesting image, but I'm showing you what it is, but I'm telling you that I haven't had a lot of success with this technique. So it's not one of my favorites.
Looks like a lot of hard work.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a lot of shots to align.
Yeah, it's a lot of shots. That's
It's a lot of
right.
shots to align.
I have enough trouble aligning 6 or 7.
Yes. But then this is one that I did. And yes, it did take me a while. So this is 20 or 30 rapid fires of Socks the cat. And,
Really?
and when I blurred that, when I aligned them and blended them together in Photoshop, align and blend, it just looked like 30 pictures of my cat. I mean, there wasn't anything really overly interesting about it.
Is Photoshop aligning or you're
Yeah,
aligning?
Photoshop's aligning.
Photoshop.
Yeah, Photoshop will align, but then you can also align yourself, but Photoshop will align. But when I saw this, I thought, well, wait a second, I'm going to take each one of the photos and I'm going to rotate them ever so slightly. So you can take that layer and rotate it 1 degree, and then take the next layer and rotate it 2 degrees, and take the next layer and rotate it 3 degrees, and take the next layer and rotate it 4 degrees. So that's what I ended up doing. So I rotated each one of the layers ever so slightly. That's what gives you all the different whiskers. And then I took a masking brush. This is the black brush. And I painted through all of the layers except the first layer where his nose and his eyes were.
Hmm.
Sounds like a job.
It was. It was, but it's that kind of a strange little motion blur. And then, it's interesting because there's certain things that didn't quite line up exactly right. And so then I had to choose his nose off of one layer and his eye off of another layer and his eye off of another layer to make it all work. So yeah, it was a good rainy afternoon task.
Kathy, when you say you rotate the layers, in Photoshop, do you take it to crop then and just kind of move that a little bit? Is that how you do it?
The move tool.
Yes.
I did the move tool and then I just rotated.
Oh, okay.
I just rotated. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
And had I got my act together, because I didn't know how to do this, had I had my act together, then I would have known, rotate the first picture 1 degree and rotate the second picture 2 degrees and rotate the third picture 3 degrees, like I just told you all. It was trial and error for me to figure that out.
I see. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I
Yeah.
understand.
And then cut through all the pictures and find the one where his face comes out. And then add a vignette and do some other type processing to it. So yeah, a little crazy, but it gives you an idea of what you can do.
But it's a cool photo.
Well, I'm glad you like it, because I like it. I think it's kind of a cool
It is.
photo.
It's
Yeah,
cool.
It
yeah.
is.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting. It's got a big vignette on it and it's got a lot of black around it. Yeah. So sometimes you just have to get in there and start trying and see what happens. So we can also do blurs in Photoshop.
That place looks familiar.
It does that look
Costa
familiar,
Rica.
doesn't it? Yes. The Rio Celeste in Costa Rica.
Mhm.
Yeah, Darla and Lynette were there with me on a trip recently. So this is where we go filter in Photoshop. We go filter, blur, motion blur, and we can go angle or we can go distance. We can do circles. So once we go in and do our filter, blur, motion blur, now we can do that motion blur in in software and control it more instead of making it more haphazard when we're out in the field. No layers, okay? Just plain old ordinary Photoshop. And so in that Photoshop layers, here's what the screen would look like, or not layers, but the blur, here's what it would look like. So in your Photoshop motion blurs, it helps if your image, by the way, is at 8-bit. It's not so big. And then filter, blur, blur path. So we can go vertical, we can go diagonal, we can create a wave if we wanted to. And then the strobe can create a multiple imprint. So we can actually have kind of a strobe. So you see over here on my right-hand side, I have field blurs and iris blurs and tilt shift blurs and path blurs. And so it's on your handout. You can go try this tomorrow. So it's just filter, blur gallery, path blur. And now you can go in here and you can play around with your path blur, or you can come down here and do a spin blur.
Are
if you
those
want
on, those are in, where was Photoshop? Yeah, those are in Photoshop. Those
Mhm.
aren't
Mhm.
things. that
They're
do
in
that.
Photoshop. Yeah. So you just go filter, blur gallery, path blur. And then this opens up just like this, and you get a path blur. And now you can decide how fast you're going to be and what your taper is going to be. You can just play with this and see what the sliders do. And then there's a spin blur underneath it. So easy to do. And you just get this little kind of icon that looks like this. And now you just click it and drag it, and you can drag it up, or this is your point where you're starting. And then you, wherever you go, that's how much of your blur you're going to get, you play with. And so then as you play and make your arc bigger, then you get more of a blur like that. So you just got to open it up and go see what happens. And that's what you end up getting, just playing around with it. And then this one,
Oh, that's cool.
I'll give you some ideas, and then maybe you won't stay up all night long doing this. Okay. Because this is unbelievably simple. So when I'm finished, I'll show you before we leave tonight, because this is unbelievably simple. So it's on the last page of your handout. It's called a twirl. And it's a simple Photoshop. You're going to use layers, believe it or not. But if you use the recipe that I gave you, you'll see it's fairly simple to do. So here's a twirl. And then I took this picture and made this twirl.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
And then right before I came on tonight, I made this twirl. So I'll show you how we do these, because they are very simple, and we'll just follow the handout and you can see exactly how they're done. So these are called twirls, and they're fun. They're an interesting concept.
You said
So-
it's on the last page?
Last page of your handout. Your handout should have 3 pages to it.
Mine has
No,
2.
no, I have 2.
Oh, no. So I have to send you how to twirl. Okay. I'll send it to you right after class. Okay. Yeah. If you want to know more, just to give yourself some creative ideas, there online is the ICM Photo Mag. Just people who are interested in doing motion blurs. Remember, you have a recording of this. Okay. And then on Facebook, there's Intentional Camera Movement Group. And then over on Instagram, Intentional Camera Movement as well. So just to see what people are doing, just to give you some ideas, sometimes just to kind of open that creativity a lot to up just a bit to see what other people are doing. And then coming classes coming back up in August, landscape photography, workflow for wildlife. My Big Bend trip is coming up. Lynette's going with me. I've still got a couple more spots if anybody's interested. And then there's a creative workshop in Rockport, Texas, the 8th through the 10th. And registration is on my website. This is where we're going to be at the Rockport Art Center. And you will be with me for 3 days, and you get assignments. And then you have to photograph those assignments, process them, submit them. We critique them and see them. And then you get more assignments, and you process, critique, show. So a lot of show and tell on strange little creative exercises.
I don't see the Rockport on your website.
It's under workshops.
I signed up for it. It's out there.
Did you sign up,
I
Linda?
did, yeah.
Yay,
Will you
very
be
good.
sending ideas of where to stay?
I will. I
Okay.
will. Yeah. It's under workshops, Darla. Should be down at the bottom.
To look it up.
I must be looking at this wrong because I don't see that.
It
Maybe
has
you have
a,
to refresh your
I
browser.
didn't notice that either, Darla, so.
What do
we
you
probably
see?
just missed
How
it.
did you notice it?
oh yeah, you might need to refresh your browser.
Oh,
And then Northern Ireland's coming up. Linda's going with me on that one. Norway for the Northern Lights, Greece, Costa Rica birds in February, and then Romania, Danube Delta for birds. I think it's fairly safe to go there now. May of, 2023, not 2022, but May of 2023. And there's all my contact information. Did you find it, Darla?
No, I'm sorry. I see Texas Hill Country, Big Bend, and creative photography.
Yeah, creative
Oh,
photography.
there it is. It does say Rockport down there.
Yeah.
Okay, my bad.
And it's their registration. So I'm not in control of registering. So
Oh.
I can't say who's going to come and who's not going to come. But last I heard today, there's already 6 people and I only take 10.
Okay.
Yeah. So already 6 people are in there. And now I'm going to go to Photoshop and let you all see how to make a twirl. Okay.
Photoshop.
Okay. Can you all see me? You see my screen?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, good. Okay, I'm going to move you all down just a little bit. Okay, following along on the handout that you all do not have. Okay, I am going to open a photo. And I just worked on that one, didn't I? Cancel. I'll show you the one I just did. Open recent. Where's my Cecropia moth? Right here. Okay, so here's my Cecropia moth. This will be in the Houston Chronicle in a couple of weeks.
He's beautiful. Yeah.
Isn't he beautiful? And
Yeah, he
I
is.
need to move this out of the way. There we go. So I'm going to go into filter. And when I go into filter, I'm going to go to pixelate. And when I go to pixelate, I'm going to go to mezzotint. Don't ask me what that is. I don't have the foggiest idea. And at mezzotint, what it does is it makes the photo a whole bunch of straight lines. And then pull this down to medium lines if it doesn't happen to be there. And so it makes medium lines, and then just simply tell it okay. And so now my image has become a bunch of straight lines. And then I'm going to go to filter, and I'm going to go to blur, and I'm going to go to radial blur. And when I go to radial blur, you get a screen that looks like this right here. And we're going to move the slider to 100%. It'll start out at 50, but we're going to move it to 100%. We want to zoom the blur method, and we want it to be the best we can. And when we say okay, that's what we get. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So
like
far,
that.
yeah.
So now we've got,
really.
if you look at it, we've got a zoom blur, right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That we didn't even have to zoom our camera. So now we're going to go in here and we're going to repeat this a couple of times. So we're going to go to blur, radial blur, and then we're just going to click it a couple of times, and it just keeps blurring the photo a little bit more every single time. So I'm just repeating it. There we go. So now I've got a totally blurred shot. Now we're going to duplicate the layer, and that's a simple Command J. And while all I did, see over here, this layer palette right here. And by the way, if you don't see your layer palette, you go to Windows and you click on layers right there. That turns it on. So just in case you don't see it, it's under Windows layers. And then on the original layer that's now called background, we want to go to filter, distort, and twirl. And when we go to twirl, this is what it's going to look like right here. And you can change your angle. So let's do 80%. We'll go the other direction. Let's do 80, about like that. There you go. and then tell it okay. So now we have blurred our photo. I just turned off the top layer. And then I'm going to select the new layer and I'm going to do the exact same thing, filter, distort, twirl. But this time I'm going to go negative. And I'm going to click. And then in the layers palette, where they're both set together, now we're going to mush them together. I've got one picture on top, looks like that. And I've got one picture on bottom that looks like that. And I'm going to leave this top one to kind. So in the layers palette, just in case you can't see it, I've got kind. And then under the normal right here and below the normal, I'm going to scroll down because I'm going to look for a different blending layer. So your picture can now look like that, or it can 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 look like that, or like that, or like that,
Cool.
or like that, or like that, or like that, or like that. And you can go all the way through all of the different blending modes to choose which one. Woo! Oh my gosh. I didn't see that one. That is so cool. So you go through all the different blending modes. I'm going to do this difference this time. That's pretty cool. That's totally different than what I did before. What I did before to show you all was right here. But I really like that difference. That difference is darn weird. So I'm going to click on that.
Where did it get the blues?
It's doing the differences in the colors.
Oh.
Yeah. Because when we come back up, you'll see there's some little gray stuff in there. So
Yeah,
who knows?
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then see if we go to exclusive and saturate and divide. We got all kinds of stuff. I like that difference though. That difference is good. And then once we get it like we want it, we can also, through the opacity, lighten the top layer or darken the top layer. I like it the way it is. And then when we've got it like we want it, we do layer flatten. And now we can simply do a file save as and save it where we want.
So save as a JPEG.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So neat, isn't it?
That is really cool.
And not hard to do.
That's Photoshop, huh?
Uh-huh. I told you it's not that bad, you know? You just have to be ready for it. Once you're ready for it, then you're like, okay, I can handle this. And you cannot learn it all at one time. You learn it a little bit, piece after piece after piece. And before you know it, you can do fun things. Question.
Darla, I just want to
Yeah.
say something to Darla. It drove me crazy at the beginning and I was ready to pull all my hair out. But towards the end, I enjoy it. And let me tell you, I'm still using it. I'm doing it with my flowers.
Well, what I'm
So it
afraid of
is fun. It is
what
fun.
I'm afraid of is I'll do something and I can't get it back to normal, you know? Like, how do you get that picture back to
Oh,
your
'cause you do-
butterfly?
You
Or your
do a
moth?
file, you did a file save as. So
Oh,
you never ruined your picture.
okay.
No, you
Yeah.
did a file save as. So
Yeah,
if
The
you just,
original picture is
Kind
still
of
there.
yeah, the original picture's still there.
Okay, all right.
So you see
But
how
it is
simple,
fun.
so you see how simple that was?
Yeah,
So it doesn't really matter sometimes what your picture is.
yeah.
You do filter, pixelate, messianic, whatever that is. There you go. Okay. And then filter, blur, radial blur.
Do you have a Photoshop class coming up?
Yeah, these are in some of the other classes, the flower class and the textures class.
It's her master class,
It's the
Darla.
master class.
Oh, those classes, oh.
So,
yeah.
so look what that did. So
That's
now we've got the radial blur, and now we can filter this and blur and radial blur. So all I'm doing is just over and over and over again. That's what I wanted to know. What I just did, I'll show you what I just did. There we go. The first one that I did wasn't on the bird, so I moved it over so that its blur was coming from the bird. And by the way, Darla, if you don't like what you just did, you just do the undo button.
Yeah, okay.
So now we can do filter, blur, and radial blur. And I'm going to move it over on the bird. There we go. Come on, come on, come on. There. So I got it on the bird more this time. And now we can do that just a couple more times. So don't stay up all night doing this, okay?
Wow.
Because now you know
Not
how
all
to do
night,
it.
why not? So are you using your R3 a lot
I'm using my R3. I am.
exclusively?
Well, I was playing around, see if I can do this while I'm talking. I was playing around, if you saw on my blog, with the R7. See if I can, I want to know if I can move that circle around. Oh, well.
I'm also curious what you think of Precision Camera in Shenandoah.
I like Precision Camera. I like them a lot. I taught a class up there on Sunday.
Yeah, I missed that. I wanted to come, but I couldn't do it.
And then I'm going to do one more, the last one, distort and twirl. And we're going to go the opposite direction.
Oh, that's pretty.
And now when we put them all together, whoa, sorry. When we put them all together,
Neat.
yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? It's got pink in it.
Yeah.
Whoa, looks like a black hole. So you never know what you're going to get.
It's like
That's
a
the
little
fun thing.
shell or a calla lily or
Look at pin light. Isn't that weird?
Mhm.
I like pin light on this one. And then just a simple layer flatten. Resize it.
remember your resize.
Pardon?
I can't remember your resize numbers.
I'm resizing right now for PowerPoint so that I can put these into the
Okay.
program next time.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it's a save as. And then PowerPoint slides. Yeah, there we go.
Wow.
And then I have to give it a name. Oh, twirl. And that way I know that it's a twirl. Okay, so that's all that I've got for you.
Oh, this is great. More
That is
stuff to
neat.
do.
So now you can start playing right away with your own images. And then I will send you the recipe for the twirl so that you
Oh,
all
great.
have that. But then I've also just given it to you right there. So I'll
That's
send
really
that to you.
cool. It's really cool.
I
Yeah,
like
it
that.
is. It's weird, isn't it? You never know what you're going to get.
You can make a pretty card out of it.
You could. Yeah. Pretty background or a card or something
That's-
like that.
That's a good idea, Lynette.
Mhm. Okay, guys, thank you all very much. You've made a
Thank
nice
you.
evening out of this.
Yes,
you,
thank
Kathy.
you so much. This is fun.
It gives you
Yes.
something else to play with your computer.
Hi, thank you.
I guess I
Yes,
download
yes,
Photoshop
yes.
now.
You got to download Photoshop now. I'll send you this recipe and then I'll send you the recording tomorrow. And then I'll send you the recipe for how to do your twirls in just a moment. Okay.
So is
I
that the third
noticed that your
page?
Photoshop says Photoshop 2022. Is there an update?
Uh-huh. In October.
Oh, you
Huh.
do have a class in October?
No. The update for Photoshop was in 2022.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Okay.
I-
All right.
I think I did that.
I think you did. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was fun, Kathy.
Thank you very
No,
much.
Thanks.
Is what you just did, was that the third page? Of
Yes.
the
Yes.
handout? Okay.
I'll send it to you in just a bit.
All right.
Oh,
So that
great.
I
So that
just
you-
heard from Deborah Duke. She told me to tell you hello.
Oh, okay.
I might just play with my blurred photos.
That's right. That's right. Play with your blurred photos and it gives you something to do with them.
Thanks
Okay.
a lot, Kathy.
Thank you. Good night,
Good
everyone.
having you all. Good night,
Nice to
everybody.
see you, Darla.
You too, Lynette. Enjoy Big Ben.
I will. I think we will.
We will. Bye-bye. Good night,
Bye-bye.
Amy.